Hello everyone, I'm Matt Simpson, the Managing Director at Candyspace. Choosing the right CMS has never been more important for businesses, so I'm thrilled that I've got with me today someone who has the war wounds of going through that many times. Rico Surridge, who until very recently was the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Which, but who's also worked at the BBC, ITV, Photobox and many others, which he can tell us about. Rico, welcome. Perhaps you could give Perhaps you could give a little bit more detail about your career so far.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So as you say, spent the last 5 years at Which, a fantastic consumer-oriented organisation, very purpose-led, wonderful group of people. Prior to that, yeah, predominantly broadcast media, a bunch of time with kind of ITV, looking across their products, BBC with iPlayer, bit of time with Photobox, a little bit of time way back in the day consulting as well, which I enjoyed. So breadth of different experiences.
Brilliant. Well, it's great to have you here. One of the things I know you did do at Which was rationalise, I think, over 30 CMSs. That must have been quite a process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I mean, I should say in so many respects, not me, of course. It was absolutely the teams that were doing all the hard graft on that. And it was a little bit unexpected, I've got to say. You know, when I joined Which, as you know, when you join any organisation, you expect there to be a body of technical debt and complexity, process debt, all of these things that you've been brought in to help work through and improve on in any organisation. But yeah, I turned up, we started looking around, we started understanding the technology estate, we started understanding the purpose and the kind of strategic vision for the organisation. And it sort of transpired, the more we kind of scratched away and the more we understood, there was this kind of plethora of different CMSs and different CMS instances. And of course, that's not really great for any of the stakeholders in that process. You know, if you think about, the customer experience, it's kind of fragmented. Even if you've got a similar design language, it's maybe not quite represented in all the same ways across that experiences. It's not all quite joined up. If you think about the editorial staff, they're having to log in and out of different systems, having to copy and paste content from one to another. They can't quite connect all the things they want to on the same pages. It's really frustrating. But then you think about the engineering team as well, and they've got to maintain, update, put the monitoring around all of these different CMSs. And so it's just it was a bit of a headache for everyone. And yeah, like I say, you expect things to be a bit messy when you start somewhere. There was a lot of complexity in that space.
What were some of the lessons that you learned by going through that process?
Oh, so many lessons. I think first and foremost, I suppose, like when you look into the eye of the storm of any kind of large scale digital transformation, it's quite scary. Particularly if you've been brought in, to drive new value and drive growth in an organization. And one of the things that's holding you back is some of the technical complexity. And understanding that in the first instance, and then being able to talk to that and take the organization on a journey, take the board on a journey and say, look, if we truly want to achieve, the goals that we've set ourselves over here, we're going to have to invest a little bit in these different areas, and for which the CMS space was one of them. And it takes time. You can't sort of get away from the fact that no matter how many you have or what kind of journey you're on in and around your CMS, it's not really something you're going to kind of click your fingers and do overnight. One of the big lessons, or perhaps not so much lesson, but one of the things that we became quite conscious of early on is that you need different teams and different people for different jobs. And actually in that particular context, when we were taking many different content management systems and consolidating them down to one, or actually two in our instance, one for the digital experiences and one for the print publication, it's kind of hard graft work. You need smart people, you need creative people, but it is quite methodical. It is quite time consuming. And so you need to go into that thinking about well, what are the right people to do this particular job? And actually the product engineering squad, the team that we put around that particular problem space, they were doing migration and consolidation for the best part of 18 months, 2 years. And having the same group of people still as energized on sort of day 700 as they were on day one, and still putting their all into making sure, okay, these are the bits of content, these are the bits of data we need, we're going to keep those. It was this feature in this CMS that we want to keep, and it was this set of capabilities in this CMS that we want to keep, and pulling that all together and taking the editorial and content team on a journey with all of that is a mindset, and is a perhaps then a different group of people that you go, okay, we've now created a platform, we've got a consolidated set of data, we want to do new and different things with that, we want to create whole new experiences and grow it. And so we thought very consciously about the team, the skill sets, but also the mindset of the individuals who were there, so we could have some of that longevity. And they did a fantastic job. It was great to see.
It's really interesting you say that. I've heard it said many times that if you focus digital transformation only on the technology, then you will fail. It's as much about the people and bringing them on the journey as it is the technology choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably more so about the people and what energizes them, what it is they're trying to achieve through the application of that technology. I mean, if we know anything about tech, it's that it changes. Whether that is the products that you've bought or the products that you're building evolving naturally, or indeed the fact that the context has changed and you're having to put a whole new product or system in the first place. So nothing really stays still for all that long. And so having people that have got adaptability and a kind of open mindset to the fact that they're building something really important today, but with the knowledge that it might change tomorrow, and not being too precious or getting too closely coupled or over-investing indeed in some of the areas that might need to change.
Interesting. I always have trouble with the word future-proofing, which gets used a lot. I'm always dubious, particularly given the pace of change now compared to even 5 years ago and the onset of AI and so on. How can you really future-proof something?
I think it's a good question. I think it probably, I mean, it's a cliche. I think it probably comes back to the people again. I think if you're going to future-proof an organization, and you're going to think about how you future-proof the technology that enables and supports it, it's got to be through the mindset of the individuals that are putting it in place. Because as you say, AI has been around for, or generative AI, things like that have been around for a little while, but there's definitely a new dawn that's taking place right now. And particularly, some of the capabilities that we see in content management systems over the last 12, 18 months have changed quite dramatically in places. And so could anyone have predicted that? I'm sure some people did predict that, but being adaptable and going, okay, well, now this new thing has come in, we're going to embrace that, we're going to understand it, we're going to do some experimentation around it. Just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean your customer base is going to want it or like it, or indeed your first implementation of it. You're probably going to have to try it a few times. In the AI instance, you're probably going to have to try a bunch of different models in a bunch of different contexts. It's unlikely to ever be a kind of one size or one hit wonder type thing. So having the mindset and having the people that can experiment and can be adaptable to both the technology changes and the industry kind of context or consumer changes, I think is the only true future proofing you can really do.
Okay, so you had over 30 CMSs. How many did you get it down to?
We got it down to 2. We got it down. One for the digital experiences principally, one for the print publication. And I would describe that as a milestone or a stepping stone. Is that the end state? Absolutely not. That will continue to evolve. I've no doubt there's a world where that becomes 1, and how the content data is used between the different kind of outputs, whether that's the print magazine, whether it's the website, the app, social feeds, whatever kind of channel of distribution, I suspect the source data will probably come back down to one place. But these things ebb and flow. I'm sure it will expand back out again as there is, a new use case the organisation hasn't thought of yet that requires something a little bit specific before that again roll back into some kind of mainstream somewhere.
So with all that experience, and I'm sure experience in some of your other roles, what would you say that businesses should consider as priorities when they are thinking about replatforming?
Yeah, okay. So I would always start off with the goal, like what is it the organisation is trying to achieve, and try and stay anchored with that. And then think as much as possible about the technology and the team choices that enable that goal. When it comes to thinking about making good technology choices, I always really encourage people to think about the technology almost as though they would think about themselves as an individual in their career and their development, and go out and talk to as many people as possible. So whether that's similar organizations in the same industry, great, but actually go out and talk to completely different organizations doing different things but with content management systems, and understand their experiences, understand some of the pitfalls and the challenges they've had, but understand some of the wins as well. And you can bundle that all up into the conversations that you have. And so rather than go, okay, we've got this one sales call from this one CMS and it kind of ticks some boxes on a requirement sheet, you can have a much more rounded, well-informed conversation with a number of suppliers. I always bias a little bit towards things like performance. When we think about creating truly great customer experiences, so much of it comes down to their immediate emotional response to working their way through a journey or whatever it might be, how they're interacting with it on a day-to-day or a moment's basis. And so the ability to have that be super performant and super slick, and therefore have all of the right monitoring, analytics, all of that kind of good stuff behind the scenes, for me is always going to be quite high on my list of platform choice considerations.
I like that, the idea that you wouldn't take a job just based on the one person who interviewed you. You'd do your own research, you'd look on Glassdoor, you'd ask your friends, you'd research the company. The same should apply to a technology choice.
Really broad, yeah, because there are so many other organisations out there that are probably doing exactly the same or similar.
Yeah, for sure. Once the CMS is in place, how do you ensure that that CMS can support the long-term outcomes and ambitions of the business rather than just delivering features?
I think it's important to think about the balance of where you're investing. And by that, I mean, any piece of technology that you put in is going to require some level of ongoing investment. This notion that you're transformed and then you're done, it's a fallacy, isn't it? So there will always be a degree of maintenance and monitoring and all of those kind of good things. But actually, if it's a core part of your product or it's a core enabler for some of your growth goals, you probably want to be investing a little bit more. You want to be thinking about what's the team that's supporting the development of that particular space. Some of that may well be feature development. Some of that may just be optimizing the features that are already there, thinking about the performance, thinking about the quality of service, whatever it might be. Sometimes that is the differentiating factor. I remember the really early days of sort of the streaming wars with iPlayer and ITV Hub and Netflix and all these kind of things. Actually, the thing that made the biggest difference aside from the content was the ability to stream the video consistently without buffering. We don't really talk about buffering anymore, but that for them at the time, that was the thing that made, among the biggest of differences for the consumer experience. And so understanding those customer pain points and having a team that is talking to customers on a weekly or a fortnightly basis and really getting into, what makes the difference for them and applying that to their roadmap and how they're implementing new things and working with the CMS and working with the creator of the CMS to make it as good a customer experience as possible to achieve those outcomes and that goals would be top of mind for me.
And then a similar question, how do you balance delivering quick wins through the CMS while still maintaining that long-term vision for digital transformation for the business?
Which is a really good question, a question that so many teams kind of percolate on at one point or another. I always begin by talking to teams about the different inputs or the different threads through any roadmap that they might be putting together. And I've always loved things like the sort of the ice, water, steam analogy for thinking about, you know, the near term, mid-term, long term, and, you know, being very conscious about the implementation that you're putting in place, because sometimes you might be able to really neatly go, well, of the time or the capacity that we have as a team, 50% is going to be on near-term quick wins, you know, those tactical growth enablers, and 50% of our time is going to be on actually this slower burn strategic shift that we're making. Sadly, life is rarely that neat and well structured, and so actually being able to go, well, we're going to spend a few months on these tactical bits and pieces that we've identified. You know, we're always going to be open to change. So if we try a few things and they work and they hit the goals that we need to hit, we can stop at that point and shift to our next piece, or indeed have a bit of runway to say, well, if they don't work out, but we do need some near-term growth, let's spend a little bit more time, let's invest in some of those experiments. So you've got to think about the sort of the ebb and flow of those things. The key, I think, is to not forget that you've got the tactical, you've got the strategic, you've got the day-to-day monitoring, you've got your technical debt, you've got your P1 incidents that blindside you on a, you know, 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And so it's, you know, a backlog is never a super neat, highly structured thing. It's always going to evolve over time, but being able to go, here are some of the big chunks, here are the boulders, here are the things we're going to go, this is what's happening in this month or quarter, and this is what we sort of notionally think is going to happen next month or quarter. And then talking to your stakeholder base about that. I think the other key thing I would say is have those conversations up front. Don't let it be a surprise. Don't have the CEO or the, you know, director of content go, oh wait, hold on a minute, I thought you were going to be working on this thing, but you've worked on this thing over here, and we understand that thing's important, but actually we really wanted this thing because it's, you know, tied to some particular date or event or whatever it might be. And so the key to success for any team is over communicate and do it really early in the process. So actually, as you're putting those roadmaps together, and you know, whether it becomes tactical or strategic starts to become by the by, because actually everyone's so well informed and invested in what that team's doing and a part of the dialogue of where they're going next. It can only really be a bit of a path to success.
It's quite hard to get the CEO excited about a sprint's worth of tech debt work compared to new features, right?
No, I disagree. You can. I think when a product engineering squad is really humming,
yeah.
And if you use the open check-in format where, you know, maybe they've got 45 minutes once a fortnight and it's open invite, anyone can come along. I measure their success in part on, has the CFO come along? Has the CEO come along? And have they got really energized by what you're talking about? Because I never see those as reporting forums. There's a little bit of reporting out, but actually it's more discursive. It's more, these are the problems we're trying to solve. How can everyone come together around them? And are they indeed the right problems in the first place? And if you can kind of cut out those layers of reporting comms that you see in so many orgs and actually go, well, look, we've got the CFO and the CMO in the room with the team. And yes, we're only talking about the next 2 weeks, but this is really important for that group of people. I've seen that put sparkles in the eyes of CEOs in the past.
That's great to hear. And actually talking about reporting and also balancing the short, medium term, long term goals, have you introduced OKRs to transform the way your teams focus and deliver those outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about OKRs quite a bit, and I'm not, but not in a kind of preachy, it's the, you know, the only way. I always start off by talking to teams and saying, all that really matters is that you have some level of focus and alignment. So you want focus in that you need to be, you know, you need some kind of anchor against which to prioritize your time. You know, it's very difficult to prioritize if you don't know what the goal is. So you need something that you're focusing in on, and you need to get a breadth of alignment, not just in the team, but beyond the team, beyond the departments, or however an organization might be structured, to make sure that this is the right thing and we're focused on the right thing. OKRs are, conceptually incredibly simple. You're just setting an objective and you're writing some kind of measure in order to achieve that objective, and that ladders up to some kind of strategy. And they're just a way to measure your, again, stepping stones or milestones towards achieving that strategy. So I'm a big advocate for them, or anything that's sort of similarly shaped to them, that allows a team to go, this is what we need to focus on, and here's how we know whether we're being successful or not, and having some good leading indicators to the progress that they're making, and then being able to use that again to inform the conversation or the dialogue that they're having within themselves, but within their stakeholder group. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, they're painful things to implement in the first instance. They're tricky to write. I think AI is probably helping teams a little bit on that front as well, because actually writing a good key result can be quite a painful process. So you end up with this thing that's kind of quite crystal clear and very measured. And you're like, well, that's great. That's really easy to read. That's so obvious. But sometimes it can take a few days of, again, kind of percolating on it and iterating and trying a few combinations to go, yes, that's the right measure. And yes, we've got some balancing metrics in there so that if we improve this, we're not actually tanking the business over here somewhere without really realizing it.
How do you align technology decisions with broader business goals to drive that long-term growth?
I mean, I never really decouple the two. And because any organization's strategy is made up of multiple parts, right? So yes, you've got your financial, commercial strategy, but that's going to be enabled in part by some kind of marketing strategy, more than likely. There's going to be a technology strategy involved in that. There may well be some kind of separate but interrelated customer services angle to it. It depends on the business, but I would say you can't really think of technology as a sort of a separate delivery, a thing that kind of sits over here that, is there, and it does kind of run a chunk of how the business operates, but we'd rather not engage with it unless we absolutely have to. And every now and then we'll kind of peek around the corner just to make sure things are okay. Majority of businesses in 2025 are in some way or another fundamentally technology enabled. And so you can't really afford to not have that at the top table, being a part of the broader considerations to achieving business success. And we talked a little bit before about, what makes a great customer experience, and sometimes, what makes the difference is things like the performance of the experience, or maybe it's having feature X or Y, or maybe it's having access to data set Z. But you can't have that as a separate conversation. You need to be, you might want to go really deep on some technology decisions in a separate room and have your advisors and such like, but you certainly want to be having some level of that technology conversation in the boardroom, and have the board, conscious of the decisions that are being made and how those decisions now impact 5 years or 10 years down the road. It's critical at this point, I think.
So going back to one of those decisions, the decision to implement a new CMS or to replatform, what do you think technology leaders should prioritize when making that decision to choose a CMS to try and deliver those better digital experiences for customers?
I mean, I wouldn't get too... it's always easier to say with hindsight with some of these things, and they're always really just stressful moments in time when you're trying to pick something and you're trying to make a good decision. As we said, go broad, talk to lots of people. But at the same time, I wouldn't put too much pressure on it, because there are always going to be lots of technology decisions that need to be made. And the CMS that you pick today, with the context and the understanding and the budget and the people that you have, may well be right today, but may well not be right in 2 years' time. And so I always encourage teams to think strategically, think about the architecture, think about the implications of picking that CMS and the languages and the skill sets that the organization is going to need to respond to picking that CMS, but also not get, so overwhelmingly tied to one thing that they feel immovable in 2 years' time if the external context changes. So there are really important moments in time, but don't at the same time put too much pressure on yourselves. And again, it's a little bit cliched, but every organization is going to make some bad decisions. Like sadly, with all the will in the world, with all of the Gartners and the talk to your peers and things like that, you're still going to make some bad choices. And so it's how you respond in those moments, how you either double down or extract yourself and not, fall into the sunk cost fallacy or anything like that and go, well, we see where we're at now in this moment of time. How can we learn from this and make a better decision for the next piece? In terms of leadership, I think one of the key things is having the resilience to stick by some of those tougher times and see them through and keep, any, again, big transformational piece of technology work is not a 5-minute activity. You're going to have to go on a real journey. And so you don't want to be the blip. You want to be okay, we started in this tough place. It was kind of a bit bumpy. We went through these things, but in the end, we ended up where we want to. You want to kind of, I think, and I think it's more fun as well, see those things through from beginning to end.
And you can't future-proof your decision.
And you can't entirely future-proof your decision because there's too many variables.
For sure. Once that CMS is in place, how can hopefully the right choice of CMS empower teams all across the business to work together more efficiently?
Well, I think unifying a group of people around a technology choice can be a really empowering moment in time, particularly if you've included everybody on that journey that you're going on. You've talked to them up front, you've done all of the good kind of engagement sessions that you want to. You've listened to people, I suppose, is the key point. And then you've made a technology decision and you've started to implement it and roll it out. And again, you've done that in collaboration with these different teams. If you make it quite human and you take everybody together, that can be such a galvanizing moment. I've seen it so many times where you've got engineering staff and you've got content staff and you've maybe got some customer services staff, and there's a new piece of technology like a content management system, and everyone's really excited about the possibility of what they're going to be able to do in the future. And then you implement it in such a fashion that it's quite iterative, and so you start to see some of those wins really early on, and people go, oh wow, okay, that's cool. We didn't know we were going to see stuff this quickly. Usually, we pick a thing and then we wait 12 months and then IT drops something on us and it doesn't really quite do what we want. But if you make that decision with them and then, a few weeks in you go, well, hey, here's a piece of it. And then they're immediately getting customer feedback from it. And then the content staff go, well, okay, we're going to do something a little bit different with how we're putting the content together and we're going to try that. Customer services get some feedback and engineering are looking at the analytics, and it becomes this kind of virtuous circle of communication and collaboration. That can be such a galvanizing, energizing. Those are the moments you want in a company because you've got your goal up here and you just start moving towards it in an impassioned way.
I love the way you talk so passionately about getting the people behind the decisions. I think that must be really empowering if you can get that right within a business.
Yeah, I think so. It's that's why I love the kind of advent of collaborative documents and things like that. But back in the day, whereas you had a decision matrix just on your laptop and you go and talk to people, but you kind of kept it all sort of to yourself. Now, in a world of sort of the Google Docs or the Office 365, whatever it might be, being able to have your decision matrix out there and everybody can look at it and engage with it and add their little bit of data and sanity check other bits of data and be involved in the decision making, it flattens the whole org again. It goes, okay, this might be a £5 million decision, whatever it might be, for a system for a period of time, but actually I've contributed and I've been a part of that, and it means everybody's got a little bit of skin in the game. Everyone's kind of involved. I love that.
What, in your experience, is a common CMS challenge that technology teams face, and how have you overcome those common challenges?
I mean, I guess if we look at the last sort of 10, 15 years, content and how it's constructed has changed a lot. And there's this eternal tension between the kind of artistry of, say, long form or long form video or long form written content, and the more kind of perhaps data informed, analytically informed approach to almost atomic sort of granular level content. And I don't think it has to be an and or. And so when I think about the challenges, more often than not, they've been between, for want of a better word, the content editorial mindset and an engineering mindset, and those two worlds kind of coming together and clashing a little bit. But I think the way that you overcome that is by going, well, you need a bit of artistry and you need a bit of data, and it's how you bring those two together in such a fashion that you can get the best of both worlds, that everybody really wins.
What CMS capabilities are most important as part of a large-scale digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, as I said a little bit before, I think performance is key for me, whether you're editorial staff wanting the ability to log in quickly, make changes and make sure those changes stick and have confidence in the quality of the CMS platform that you're using. That is absolutely critical. I think flexibility and being able to go, okay, there's a core here, and actually we can start with that, and that does the 90% of what we need to. We didn't want to build that. That's the commoditized out of the box stuff, 2 thumbs up, great. But the ability to still go, but there's a 10% that's going to be our USP, that's going to be our differentiator. We want the flexibility to be able to make changes, make tweaks, and do things in uniquely our own. And then building on that a little bit, a CMS that is open to change and is taking advantages of new technology and technology trends, and provides early access to experiment with things. I've seen, most CMSs at the moment are experimenting with AI in some form or another. I've been really interested in the ones that use things like AWS Bedrock and allow you to play with a multitude of models in a multitude of different contexts, because actually, the model that is best at summarizing a piece of long form might be different to a model that is better at pulling out a key piece of data that's going to be used on a social channel. But allowing early access to play with some of those things in a stage environment or something like that, and indeed then experiment with 5% of your audience or something like that, is absolutely critical to iterative, well-informed growth, I think.
Absolutely. Last question. So if all of this is working right, you've made the right choice, have you seen a CMS improve user experience and customer satisfaction? What's got you really excited about the capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a good decision, and you have teams that are engaged with it, and you've invested in having some long-lived teams that are going to continually monitor and improve that experience for customers. It pays dividends, because particularly if that experience is core to your offering, your service, your product line, whatever it might be, that's what people are coming back to. And either the day-to-day interactions with that product, or some particularly sticky feature that maybe you only interact with once every 6 months or annually or something like that. But knowing that works, and that works well, and having people engage with it and understand it, I think a good CMS choice pays dividends internally, externally. It makes a huge difference.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you. What I love is the way you talked about the blend of technology, data, artistry, the human touch, empowering teams, all of those things working together to deliver success for a business. So thank you so much, Rico. It's been really
pleasure, Matt.
fun talking to you. Thank you.